You're watching a Satluj TV News special. I'm Angus Scott in London. August the 15th, a day of celebration. A day when hundreds of millions of Indians celebrate their country's liberation and independence from British rule in 1947. But peel back the layers just a little, and that date holds quite a different meaning for millions of others that were impacted by what happened on that day 75 years ago. A dark, sinister and tragic legacy that Indian independence left for millions of people, directly impacted by what unfolded during that turbulent period. In today's video, we're going to take a brief look at the lesser-known story of Indian independence and the horrors it wreaked upon so many people. In the 19th century, after a rich and honourable history spanning millennia, the Punjab came under British rule. In 1858, with Queen Victoria presiding over her enormous global empire, the Punjab was a large and fertile asset that spanned from Delhi to the northwest frontier, from Chandigarh to the Himalayan foothills of Himachal Pradesh. Its people were an amicable mix of Sikhs, Muslims and Hindus, living peacefully side by side under British rule. Whilst the morality of the British Raj is open to debate, during that time the Punjab blossomed into the breadbasket of India, and as it revolutionised agricultural practices with extensive irrigation, by 1947 had over 14 million acres of land under cultivation. But as the Second World War thundered across the globe, politics and religion had begun to merge into a fateful mix across the subcontinent. The Muslim community, led by the charismatic Muhammad Ali Jinnah, began to demand autonomy and a homeland for Indian Muslims, a divisive tactic that began to distance them from Sikhs and Hindus. As Indian politics became increasingly fuelled by religious division, and with Britain's governing resources focused on fighting the war, parties across India began to recognise the growing opportunity to finally throw off British rule. But tensions mounted as Hindus, Sikhs and Muslims jostled for position and power as the smell of freedom grew. In turn, the British began to realise that their grip of control was loosening and were sitting on a potential civil war. And so, on the 20th of February 1947, British Prime Minister Clement Attlee declared that Britain would leave India by the 30th of June 1948, marking the end of 2 centuries of colonial rule. A date to encourage the Indian National Congress and Ali Jinnah's Muslim League to agree a workable plan for newly independent India. The final Viceroy of India, Lord Louis Mountbatten, arrived in India in March 1947 to oversee the transfer of power. But shortly after his arrival, Mountbatten announced that Britain's departure date was to be brought forward to the 15th of August 1947, an announcement that also formalised the plan to partition the Indian subcontinent. In the centre would be majority Hindu India, and to the east and west majority Muslim East Pakistan, today's Bangladesh, and West Pakistan, today's Pakistan. A British lawyer, Sir Cyril Radcliffe, was given 40 days to draw up the boundaries, a man who'd never set foot further east of Paris. And so began one of the most contentious acts of geopolitical vandalism in history. Radcliffe divided India in the west through Punjab and in the east through Bengal. And as he arbitrarily hacked India into 3 pieces, these 2 regions found Radcliffe's knife slicing through their heart as he split each in half to form the frontiers between the 3 new nations. As both provinces were carved in two, nearly 7 million Hindus and Sikhs and 7 million Muslims found themselves in the wrong country. And thus, India became divided beyond repair. The people suddenly found themselves forced to polarise along religious lines, where once they'd lived peacefully side by side regardless of faith, then began one of the greatest migrations in human history, as millions of Muslims trekked to West and East Pakistan, while millions of Hindus and Sikhs headed in the opposite direction. Many hundreds of thousands never made it. As the new communities united by religion formed, division grew, and with it anger and violence. Across the Indian subcontinent, communities that had coexisted for almost a millennium began to attack each other in a terrifying outbreak of sectarian violence, with Hindus and Sikhs on one side and Muslims on the other, a mutual genocide as unexpected as it was unprecedented. And caught in the middle of this terrible divide across Punjab and Bengal The carnage was dreadful, with massacres, arson, forced conversions, mass abductions, savage sexual violence. It's estimated over 75,000 women were raped, many of them disfigured or dismembered. Gangs of killers set villages aflame, hacking to death men, children and the elderly, while raping the young women. Refugee trains arrived in stations with blood pouring through the doors after being ambushed over and over again. It was shocking, brutal and indiscriminate. And the violence focused on the two areas caught in the middle of the sectarian war, Punjab and Bengal. Afterwards, many war veterans claimed partition's brutalities were worse than they'd witnessed in Nazi death camps. And by 1948, as the Great Migration drew to a close, more than 15 million people had been uprooted, and between 1 and 2 million were dead. India was free and independent. British rule was over and India was a new nation in charge of its own future at last. But at what cost? As millions of people across today's India celebrate August the 15th, there are those who will never forget what that cost was. Those who tread the paths or plough the fields of Punjab and Bengal, who will always know that cost. For it is they who tend the ground which soaked up the blood of those thousands that died during that terrible period, and today still suffer the divisive legacy that came with partition on August the 15th, 1947. You've been watching a Satluj TV News special. If you have any comments or opinions on this story, you can comment below, or why not drop us a direct message at message@satlujtv.com. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, thanks for watching. For Satluj TV News, I'm Angus Scott in London.